September meeting of the Hudson Park Board to order. The first item is we have our minutes from the last meeting. Has anyone seen any changes that they should have, or corrections or omissions? If not, to approve.
Second to, I was going to say move to approve, but you said it, I think, first. I'm saying second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion carried. The new business we've got. This Zoom is something.
I know.
In the packet was the fees that we're having for the pavilions and the band shells within the park. Mike, you want to take that and run through doing with the fees?
Yep. So as you'll notice, we really didn't recommend changing anything. Obviously, like I was talking to Pat earlier, the climate that we're in socially, just economically, it didn't really seem right to make any adjustments this year with any of our rental fees as it pertains to, the band shell, pavilions, and in the future boat moorings and a boat launch. So, my recommendation was just kind of stay the status quo this year and just revisit this next year. Hopefully things will be brighter, better outlook. Obviously, as Deb had put in the packet that, she gave kind of a rundown, a summary of what was used at the parks this year. And actually, if you look at it, it was probably one of our busier years just because people weren't able to be inside. So we had a lot of park reservations outside, a lot of cancellations, a lot of maneuvering around. I want to thank her for making a lot of those happen. But that's kind of my recommendation with the fee schedule for, Prospect Park, White Camp Park, the Lakefront. So if there's no questions, I would request a call to approve those fees.
So I have a question, Michael. We've got the new pavilion at Grandview, and I didn't see it on the sheet there. Is that something that we're planning on adding as far as like a rental type deal?
I guess I'll toss that question back to the park board. Is that, would that be a viable space to rent out into the future?
I think we need to look at it.
Okay.
And see what makes sense.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's going to be a really nice space, and I was looking at thanks Deb for the numbers on all the rentals, because when I was looking at White Camp, that's huge, 78 total rentals. I mean, that's such a great pavilion there, right? But I'm thinking Grandview is going to be our new one that's a little smaller, right? But I think when it gets done, it's going to be in awesome condition. So I think it'd be great to add that to the list.
Yeah.
The other activities that are going on up there that people will want to use it, from people from the dog park to the ball fields, the playgrounds. It's all going to be a magnet.
Mm-hmm. So Pat, are you thinking that we want to add it as a rental, or what are you thinking?
I think we should look at adding it.
Okay.
Is my opinion that.
Can that be added kind of retroactively after the building is complete?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's an occupied, usable building yet. We haven't got an occupancy permit, so.
Right. I just don't know if we add it now, not really knowing when it's actually going to be open, or do we just wait until it is open, maybe look at the space, what's a viable number for the rental, so on and so forth, and add it at that time.
Yeah, and I'm good waiting on it, Mike. I didn't want us just to lose sight of it, because I know it's still being constructed or whatnot. But I was thinking, like, if it's on course, I think in the spring it's going to be complete, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what I was thinking is, like, for the summer rentals coming in, people are going to want to book it if it's available this spring. So we can revisit it, like, down the line. I'm totally good with that.
Okay.
Okay.
Will there be any conflict if someone is reserving the fields with the idea that they get access to that whole park, shall we say? I think there'll ever be a time where there's people from the ballpark that want to use it, and then we have a special event going on. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
Well, it's something that could happen. I don't know that it would. With it being so centrally located there, it isn't necessarily the softball fields pavilion.
Yeah.
that they would have dibs to it automatically with the fields.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to. We'll want to make that language clear.
And if I remember right from the restrooms, they're on the outside of it, right, Mike? So that other people could use those at the same time that somebody's renting the actual other side of the pavilion.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, you basically, if we were to move forward, that you basically renting the shelter portion of it, right? That would be the space that you would rent. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we just kind of what Mike was alluding to. We'll have to think about how to do this, but you know, it's a very active park up there, right? There's a lot of people, like Pat said, with the playground, dog park, and the ball field being used. And this can be done with signage and stuff like that, but I don't want to run into situations. We ran into some situations out at White Camp Park where there were reservations that were made, but groups weren't adhering to the signage that was posted. So a couple times throughout the summer months, you know, there'd be a group of people that reserved White Camp Park that would go up to the park to start using the facility, and there'd be another group using it. And I can see that happening more often at at Grandview just because of the proximity of the other activities going on there. So we may need to think of a way to either cone it off, or I don't want to chain it off, but I mean, it might come to that where, you know, we might have to actually put up a physical barrier with reservation signs on the physical barrier saying, you know, it's reserved at this point to not to have those conflicts. Because I mean, when people are reserving the facility and they expect to have it open and they get there and there's people there, that's an awkward conversation to have with those folks, right? And we want to try and eliminate as much of that as possible.
Unless we, with a, you know, that is stating that the pavilion is reserved today, or the pavilion is reserved, so that anyone in there in advance of that would be aware of it, so that when the reserved people show up, they can point to the sign.
Right. Yeah, I think there's ways of going around of doing it, is just putting it into practice. Yep.
Yeah.
And I think maybe this first summer kind of an experiment too, where if we get into it, we don't want to overbook it or something. So we just do it from time to time the first summer, just to kind of see how it plays out with the different groups going in there. So maybe we don't overdo it the first summer, but we do a few of them just to kind of see how that meshes.
Okay. Yeah. So running down the rest of the issue sheet, obviously, you know, the pavilion rentals stay the same. Lakefront Park bandshell reservation, we're recommending to stay the same. And then the boat launch, the daily fees, and the yearly passes stay the same due to the state statute that we have to follow, that our fees can't be more than what the Wisconsin state parks allow. So, and they didn't raise their sub entrance fees, so it stay the same for us as well. So.
And then you did on the mooring.
We'll get to that in the next agenda item. Yep.
So I would move to approve the 2021 park user fees as listed.
I have a question.
Yeah.
This is under the pavilions. It just needs some clarification. There's always a category that says tax exempt with certificate. Is that the fee whether you're a resident or a non-resident with a certificate, or is that just for residents? Every single one.
That's for the nonprofits, you mean? That would be a 501c. Yeah, that would be a 501c3 organization, which there's not very. But
my question is, does it apply to 501c3s that are non-city residents as well? Is that reduced fee?
Yeah, it has.
Okay, yeah. I just was questioning whether that, because it's significantly different.
Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions regarding the fees before we move into the vote? If not, the chair will call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
I'm sorry, who seconded that? I missed it. Paul was first.
I moved it, but I didn't hear a second. Just to.
Kennedy the second.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
Thank you.
Mike, you want to go into the mooring fees then?
Yep. So the reason why this one is separate is because as Deb and I were looking through the policy, there's a couple of changes that we'd like to see changed for the upcoming season. The first one, it was highlighted in red. We ran into this situation last year, and I think it makes sense moving forward. So boat moorers are able to carry over, so they get first dibs on the following year's spots. So anybody that had a mooring slip in 2020, they're automatically get a chance to re-up their mooring slip for 2021. If they don't, we put out an ad and people submit applications, and they're put on an alternate or waiting list, right? If there's any vacant moorings, we pull from the waiting list, the alternate list, and we fill up as many spots as are available. Now, let's just say, we had 10 spots and we only had 8 people apply. So we only had 8 alternates. So we still have 2 spots that are remaining. We really don't have anything in the policy that how to go about divvying those up. So I just wanted to add in the policy, once all the carryovers have submitted and got their spot, once the alternate list has been exhausted, that the director is able to basically give out mooring balls on a first come first served basis throughout the season, remainder of the season. And we can, I don't know if we want to add anything on, a prorated rate into the policy. Let's just say if there's an open mooring in July and someone wants to take it up for the last three months of the season, do they pay maybe a prorated rate for the rest of that season? So that was one. That was one change. And then the other change that I had was number 13 in the policy. I just want to strike that altogether. So typically, what's happened in the past is city staff has taken the time, park staff, basically they go down and check the mooring field on a weekly basis, and then they report back whether or not the mooring ball is vacant. It's been vacant for the last couple of weeks, and then under the policy it says that the person that owns that ball is supposed to give a written explanation why they're not on it, so on and so forth. I guess from my perspective, from the city perspective, I don't care if their boat's on the ball or not, as long as we're getting paid for that spot. So I know that's how, when I was down in Wabasha, I ran the campground down there, 50 spot campground. And there are people that pay for a seasonal campsite and they didn't bring their camper in until August. Well, it didn't really matter to me because we were still getting that revenue regardless. So I guess I'm just recommending we just strike all that. It would, it'd save the staff time from going down and having to constantly check. There's no confusion with the boat moorers having to explain themselves why. I don't really care. And so I guess I'm just recommending that we strike that altogether from the policy. So
is there a waiting list though? Are people not using it and other people don't have the opportunity to use it because somebody's not using it? How often is there a waiting list?
So since I've been here, I know last year we didn't. The first year I was here, there was a waiting list of like 2 or 3 people. Last year we didn't have a waiting list at all. We did have, some openings. We pulled from the waiting list. Everybody got a spot. And then we had some vacant moorings, and we actually went out and put an ad in the paper, and a couple more people came on board. But we really haven't had it's not like we have a waiting list of 15 to 20 people waiting to get out there.
Okay.
So do you want the motion, Mike, just to blanket cover the changes that you've made? All in one?
And all in one, and then the fees, obviously recommending that we stay the course with the fees. That's something that we probably want to look at in the future. In the issue sheet, the fees haven't been changed in 2009. I know there's been talk over the years about raising them to maybe come in line what some other facilities are charging. However, whenever we try to even incrementally change it, we get a lot of backlash from the mooring community. A lot of the sailboat moorers will contact the city and explain, why we're not seeing any improvements down here, why are you charging us more, so on and so forth. So, nothing that we have to do this year, but just moving forward, if we do want to start incrementally charging more based upon, what other surrounding locations are doing, that's something that we have to take into mind.
Okay. So is there a motion?
Yeah, I would move to approve the 2021 mooring fees and policy changes as stated.
I'll second.
Any further questions before we go to a vote? If not, the chair will call the question. All those in favor signify by aye.
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 Against? Motion carried. I think that'll work, Mike. I think that'll work really well for the coming year.
Yeah.
Mhm.
New business, excuse me, old business. We've got the solar walk. I know they're here to present part of it. Deb or Mike, do you want to take that?
Chris, be here, Mike, right? I think he's still on.
Yep. So they, the library, Christopher Mick reached out to us again, and they want to just bring this in front of the park board. They're looking to do some 2021 programming. And we just suggested that he come back to park board, kind of explain what they're looking to do, and get feedback from the park board before they go ahead and take those steps to implement. So, Chris, if you're here, why don't you go ahead and explain what you got cooking down there?
Excellent. And is it possible for me to share some slides here?
Sure.
Okay.
Nate might have to.
Okay.
I'm turning it on here.
Okay.
Thank you.
You get it okay, Chris?
Yeah, I think I got your answer. Did everybody see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So a couple of these are recaps from before. So just to reiterate what we did, it was the outdoor activity idea since we couldn't do things programming on site at the library, and a reference for what the graphics look like. So a few things we learned in doing it. This was the original concept for the graphic that was going to have a QR code on the bottom of it where people could scan it with their smartphone, and it would take you to an animation of that planet, the solar system, and different things. The QR codes really had to be an insanely big size to be able to be, scanned from your phone kind of standing up unless you got, right down there and did it. So we kind of dropped that being on the graphics, and we put it on the little flyer maps that you could pick up at the library and do that. So we made that change. And the other one that I wanted to report back on, because I remember when I was presenting last time, there was some discussion of, making this opportunity available to other groups, if they'd want to do the same thing and see it. And on the install, we found that it worked really well on the section kind of underneath the arch sign leading up to the bridge on the nice flat sidewalk. As it got to the very dimpled, pitted part of Dyke Road as you went out, when I kind of kept checking in on it every day after one of those big rainstorms we had in the evening, the water just worked its way underneath all the graphics that were on the more pitted parts, no matter how well we worked them in. So I wanted to give that feedback, that if anybody wants to do something like this in the future, until that is, resurfaced or smoother, it's going to be a tough road to go to have any graphics adhere to that outer section. So I kind of made the judgment call to pull up. There were a couple of them that were still hanging in there, but with the decay and kind of them working off of the Dyke Road there, I pulled all the outer planets up and just reduced it to an inner solar system, which was the infographic through Mars. And those are the ones that were on that aforementioned kind of nice flat stretch leading up to the bridge there. So those all held up really well. Here's one of the photos I just took when I pulled them all up over the weekend. And they held up really well. Traction was really good. Graphics looked good. No fading on it. So that was why I've kind of repurposed doing it. In the initial proposal, was going to just pull those up in November and do a new set spring 2021. And I wanted to revise it based on that to having it start in front of the library. So if you can see my image here, I just kind of chalk marked it out. But it would start, this is the sidewalk right in front of the library, where it would be the same set of graphics, starting with the infographic and then the sun and going through. And a reference, there's still the Hudson graphics, which are, again, I've been checking on to see how well everything's holding up. Those still look great. and are doing good. So the inner planets would kind of be here. You'd take the crosswalk at the Phipps and kind of start heading into the more downtown section. And so for reference, this is like Jupiter, looking up at the Phipps, and then you would wind up, this is the last one. This, if you kind of is down by the boat dock area, so if you kind of turned around a little bit from here, I'm kind of at like the backdoor entrance for Angel's Pet World is about where I am downtown. So that is kind of my revised proposal that since there's going to be those issues with them sticking on the Dyke Road section, I just wanted to install my second set kind of going a slightly different way. So it's the same distance, the same graphics with the little changes we made. And then the other thing we learned on this little QR map we made, since we're making this change, we thought we'd add just an overhead map indicating, you know, where you're going, starting at the library and where you'd be going, kind of taking the crosswalk and that in case people are a little bit disoriented as to where they're going or how far it goes or things like that. So that was kind of the revised plan.
That's good.
Chris, are you looking to put any of the stickers in Lakefront Park, like underneath the arch or on the trail? Or are they all going to be on the sidewalk?
They'd all be on the sidewalk. I kind of walked out some different routes doing it, and my concern on being on nice flat sidewalk led me to kind of the route I laid out for you, because I looked at, it's that rougher kind of sidewalk, you know, going around the, it's a mix of, there's that smooth sidewalk kind of behind the snack shed area, and then it gets kind of rough again. And my concern is just like, you know, over the spring and summer, if we get some good rainfalls, it just seems to be the experience with these that if there's any kind of pitting or area where water can get underneath, it's going to, and just kind of pull up the whole graphics. So the iHeart Hudson ones and the ones I did, if it's a nice, clean, flat sidewalk, it tends to stick really well and hold up. And so I thought I'd give that feedback for mine, and then for any future groups that come to you that want to do it, that's just my live and learn thing. I thought I'd share for feedback for those groups.
Good.
Okay. You know, Pat, I don't know what you think about this, but seeing that it's not actually in the park, I don't know if the park board really needs to take any action on it, unless you think otherwise. I don't know. What do you?
Well, it wouldn't hurt us. It wouldn't hurt them doing it, right? If we did.
Right.
It would just maybe reinforce the fact that we think it's a good idea and kind of an endorsement of it.
Yep, fair enough.
So
Yeah, I really like the idea. Christopher, I was going to ask just one question.
Oh, sure.
Thanks for laying that out too. I appreciate it. I think it's a good opportunity. Just the question is, ending July 31st, is there a reason for that, or would you consider like extending it maybe the first couple weeks of August? And the reason I'm just thinking this out or asking is, I'm just thinking like a good summertime type thing before, you know, the school year starts. So I don't know if there's a specific reason to end in July or something.
No, I was trying to just, you know, pick some bracketed dates when we were doing the fall and then the spring, summer. I didn't want to be trying to put my footprint down that I was trying to take over, you know, for a year, do the whole thing. But yeah, obviously I think that was the other thing. I wasn't sure how well the graphics would hold up, and I was interested in looking at the iHeart Hudson ones since those were out longer and checking in on those. But they're all doing great, and the colors hold up, and they look really good. So I would be more than happy to, you know, extend it and have it there for like a summer activity, and that I just didn't want to overstep and do that. So that's why I kind of did the bracketed.
then do you want our authorization to carry it out like the Labor Day weekend? And
I think,
want to pull it early?
Yeah, I think it would hold up. You know, if there's any issues, kind of like what happened on this one, if anything's starting to deteriorate, I can just make a call and pull it early. And notify all kind of concerned groups. But I think if it's all doing well, and I keep checking it all the time and plan to, I think it could make it through the summer.
Paul, do you think that would work?
Yeah, I'm totally good with it. I just think it's a great summertime activity. I don't know the starting date you were thinking of putting it down, Christopher. Do you have a sense of?
I was looking at spring, and I just wanted to check the weather, you know, find a good stretch where it warmed up a little bit and not, you know, with a lot of ill weather, where I could kind of clean up those sections of sidewalk and get them down. So I just said spring is kind of a placeholder for watching the weather. So I don't have a hard date. I just thought kind of like I extended it a week. I was going to pull it November 1st, but we had that such nice weather. I put on the library website, like we extended it to November 8th, if you wanted to get out and check it out because it was so nice.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to watch the weather.
Yeah, no, in my mind, I'm good with, I just think it's a summer type thing. So I don't know if that's May through Labor Day. I'm totally good with that. So I'm flexible to if it's not holding up, and it sounds like you're going to keep a good eye on it, which is great too. So if you need to pull it early, I think that's fine too. Just get as much use as we can out of it. So I guess with that said, I'd like to motion to approve.
I'll second.
Any further discussion or any questions? If not, the chair will call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. I think Chris is a really good program.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Great tab on down there or that the kids.
Yeah, I'm hoping it'll get a lot of foot traffic, and we're going to have do promos on at the library, giving out little prizes if we see people checking out the walk and asking them to post selfies with it and stuff, doing a hashtag. So we hope we get a lot of traffic with it next summer.
Yeah, that's great. Mike, the other thing we have.
Yep. So the last item that we have on the agenda is just a discussion on the Grandview and Burton Park fee structure and related documents. First thing I want to say to the board before we go ahead and I start going through this and any discussion after it is this is merely for discussion tonight. I'm really not looking for any formal approval. I haven't presented any of this to any of the organizations that would be using the facility. I probably just wanted to kind of walk through with the park board, get your initial reactions, some things that I was kind of hee-hawing over, and go from there. So my intent is to listen to what you have to say tonight, make those changes, and then reach out to those organizations over the next month, late November, December, and then bring this back to park board in January for some formal approval so that we have it kind of set for the 2021 season. So with that being said, Deb did some legwork and she gathered a bunch of information from surrounding communities, Eau Claire, Rice Lake, a couple from down south, and kind of looked at what they were doing, Franklin, what they were doing with their fee structure and prioritizing fields. As you look through the document, this is more than just how much a group is going to pay for a particular field, whether it's practice, whether it's a game, a tournament, whether it's, line striping. It goes into kind of what the school has done is prioritizing groups, because what we ran into last year was we had an influx of requests and it was hard to pick and choose who got field space, why did this group didn't, and we were kind of hearing about it. So it kind of breaks out the priority classes in 6 different priorities. And then it goes on to further explain, what is needed to establish or what documentation the city needs to basically justify. So we want to have some form of documentation. We want to have some proof of why you claim to be in that priority class. And then it further goes on to explain, how the field allocation process works. And why certain groups are getting field time over others, so on and so forth. So, the main purpose of this is to have something down on paper and not just a verbal, handshake agreement, which we've done in the past, however many years that facility has existed. So, obviously, as you can see in the table, it lists out, the priorities and what the associated costs are. I know for marking the fields at $50 per field, the school district charges $150. So we're drastically lower than that. It includes the Burton Park field rental and field marking is there as well. The idea is, go ahead,
Mike. A field like Burton that St. Pat's uses pretty heavily in the spring for their games and their practice and the like. Mm-hmm. So if they're on the field for 2 hours a night, there's $10 a night for practice getting charged to St. Pat's for using the field. In the past, do a lot of work on the field in exchange for for using it. Like,
okay,
stations have an offset like that.
I like an in-kind labor donation to offset cost type thing. Is that what you're?
Yeah. Same with the boosters, do a lot of work taking care of fields and the like that we don't have to do because they do it.
Mm-hmm.
They usually just don't get charged the field prep is what they have. St. Pat's just hasn't been charged for practices in the past. They've always paid for the games,
Okay.
but never paid for any practices. And we haven't really ever had a lot of conflict with them so far. It's mainly at Grandview where we don't charge for marking if the boosters or other organizations want to.
Yeah.
Okay. So underneath the table there, it kind of highlight I have individual personal use for Hudson residents. There's no charge as long as the fields are not reserved or have been field prep for a future use. And, you know, we don't want to just limit our fields to organizations only. We want to be able to have the public still use the fields if they're available. You know, they were funded primarily through the taxpayers, and we want to be able to have them available for taxpayer use. In the priority classes, I don't know if you want me to, I'll walk through it real quick. You know, priority 1 is Hudson High School athletic director scheduled events. Priority 2 is 501c3 with 10 plus more years. Or priority 2, I'm sorry. Priority 3 is 501c3 with 5 to 10 years. Priority 4, documented nonprofit with Hudson mailing address, continuous operation for less than 5 years. Priority 5 is documented nonprofit with mailing address outside of Hudson. Priority 6 is for-profit or commercial groups or organizations. And the one thing that I wanted to ask the board's input on is I didn't include anything with adult softball. Obviously, they've been a primary user of Grandview Park on, I believe, Sunday nights. It was a couple nights throughout the summer, but they reduced the teams there, and I believe it was just Sundays. And I don't know if we want to make them a separate, because underneath this priority class, I would put them under priority 6, because they're not a nonprofit, they're not a 501c3. So all of a sudden they go from having field space for 20, 30 years, I don't know how long that facility's been there, to being low on the totem pole. And I don't know if that would, obviously that probably wouldn't go over very well. So
especially when you have the concession with them.
Yeah. Right.
Are they Hudson people? I mean, would they go above the priority 5 even if it's a Hudson resident that use this versus somebody outside of Hudson, even if it is a nonprofit?
There's a mix of people that are in the adult softball league. They come from within the city limits, within the surrounding townships, from other communities. That's why it's hard to put them in a category.
Could we put them in a category that is really the high school events? Could they be there a second tier under that first priority? Or is that giving them too much?
Well, why does the Hudson High School director have that much authority over our parks?
Well,
why isn't it our parks director?
That priority level is meant to say that if the high school reaches out to us in the spring for spring ball, right, when they have games and there's like rain delays, that they would have the field access to come on our fields and schedule, but they would still go through us. They wouldn't be scheduling our fields for us.
Okay.
That's what that means. But I think maybe, to Karen, to your point, maybe we do, just because there is such a long-standing relationship with adult softball, and they might not even have teams this upcoming season, but I don't want to, they have a concession agreement to use a concession stand. So, I mean, they've been a mainstay of that facility, and I don't want all of a sudden, go from top down to bottom, and they're like, what just happened here? And I want to be able to include them and give them some field time up there, because they are an important part of just overall recreation within the city, giving adults an opportunity to be on the fields and playing softball and baseball and all that stuff. We want to give them time to do that.
I think I also support Karen's point. One of the things I thought looking at it was 5 and 6 should almost be flipped a little bit. It should be I think it should be Hudson residents first before we go nonprofits outside of the city, just because they're already paying for the fields out of their taxes too. So seems like we should favor the local folks as opposed to a nonprofit from the metro area or whatever. So I think, Karen, I think you're right on that. My other point, Mike, is there something I'm missing between priority 2, 3, and 4, other than the number of years this nonprofit has existed? I'm failing to understand the significance of whether the nonprofit has been there 5 years, 10 years, or 15 years. I don't understand the point.
Yep. So you're not missing anything. It is based upon the number of years of serving the community. You know, with Hudson Boosters and their relationship with the city, you know, they've done a lot for the city. They've been around for a number of years, where you got a lot of upstart groups, and that's a discussion for the board. I mean, does it make sense to give kind of preferential priority to an organization that's been around for a long time compared to one that has just started up within the last couple of years? And that's why the priorities were broken out like that, is to try and support those organizations. And not saying that we're not going to have field time for the other ones. They'll just have to just won't get the prime times in the late, you know, late afternoons, early evenings. They can come on our fields whenever, you know. So
there's a distinction in there that's kind of going unsaid, and that is they've had a relationship with that particular park for 10 years, 5 years, or what have you, as opposed to just being a nonprofit organization in Hudson, right? So Rotary has been a nonprofit organization in Hudson for a long time, right? They don't necessarily have any preferential treatment over the Softball Association because they're a 501c3 and they're here longer. Is the point of that they have no relationship with the field, and where we're looking to preserve the relationship we have with organizations that have been using the field and the community and the parks for a long time, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so maybe the way to do this, because when I looked at the documents, it seemed really confusing. 2, 3, and 4 are all about nonprofits. Could they just be put into one, but you would have language something along the lines of, it's a nonprofit based on the seniority, you know, like the number of years they've been already working with the city or something like that. So then you don't have to break it down, but it's like you kind of already know who you're working with. And then as groups come in, you start working with them, and then you know, hey, we've been working with these new guys for 2 years or something. But it just seemed really cumbersome to have them broken down like the 15, 10, 5. It seems like it just should be a nonprofit in general, but then on kind of a seniority basis, I guess. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, because if you're an organization that's been using the park for the last 10 years, well, you're making plans for your organization with other organizations or whatever it is that you're doing up there, with the intent of being able to, or the knowledge of thinking you're going to be able to use it and continue on there because you're, if you will, grandfathered in, so to speak. And then the newbies come in after you've had your chance to look at the schedule. That's what you're trying to promote, correct, Paul?
Yeah, right. And I'm just trying to get rid of the categories and just say we work with all these nonprofits in Hudson, but it's just kind of I don't know if seniority basis is the best way to say it, but then I don't know if that's the right language for it, but that's the idea I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
Well, is there a possibility, are there some of those associations long-term with these fields that are not nonprofits? So do we need a category for those that maybe have just had this long-term relationship but are not nonprofits? Or I don't know, maybe they all are.
Could we grandfather them in some way, like a grandfather priority for some of those?
Well, that's what I was thinking. Maybe priority 2 is that. It's sort of that grandfather category of people who've had a long-standing use.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I don't know if the nonprofit status matters in that particular group.
Not really.
The other thing that comes to mind too is I don't know. I read through it, but maybe it should be in here. Is there a date where you open the gates and say sign up for your fields for 2021 now, as far as a priority, I don't know if it makes any sense to prioritize almost when we talk about grandfathering in or something, reach out to, obviously there's the high school, but then we talked about boosters. We talked about the softball group. Do they get a chance to present us with, hey, we love every Sunday from 4 to 6 or whatever. And then once that's boxed out, even if there's a priority 2 that comes in the way, you could say, I'm sorry, it's already booked. I don't know if timing weighs with this priority list or what comes first.
Like a staggered sign up.
Yeah.
We've always sent letters.
So,
So, I mean, we have sent letters out every year, and we've given them, it's usually like in the middle of March. Obviously last year was a little different because we didn't know what was happening, but and of them, we usually have always gone by what they had the previous year. So if the nonprofit, or if softball, for instance, had it like 3 nights a week, then we would give it to them, but then they've gone down to just 1 night. And so we would say had the year before, because Hudson softball used to take pretty much mostly all the weeks, and then the boosters started filling in between. So that's kind of what we have done. Deadlines, I know they try to get their schedules. I don't know exactly how that works for when they're trying to line up their schedules, the boosters and everybody else. So their sign-ups for the teams and things might be different, but we always did March. So we could do that if we get a good date again.
Yeah. That sounds kind of like a hybrid. Because my thought, looking at this, let's say I'm a priority 4 and I pick this particular date, and all of a sudden a priority 2 comes up the next day and says, I want that. Is it a first come, first serve, or do we go back to priorities? I don't want to make it a mathematical equation that's, I want to make it easier than that. But I think reaching out to those grandfathered or locked and loaded people that we know are going to bring a calendar and say, this is what we want to do, and then kind of open it up to the general new groups that want to sign up. I don't know if that makes sense, or maybe I'm making it harder than what you've done here, Mike. So
no, staggered scheduling. I would just call it staggered scheduling. You kind of give those high priority groups first stab at it. The thing is, and I put it on the back, trying to limit as much. Being a public facility, I don't want to have a group monopolize it. That's the problem where I run into, because if we go to Hudson Boosters, Hudson Boosters, they have multiple teams, right, at multiple age levels. I mean, they probably have enough teams to fill it up the whole time. So if we were to go to them, and they would probably give us a calendar that would give us every day of the week from 4 o'clock to 9 o'clock, and they're the only ones using the facility. So at that point, not just. So I mean, there's kind of a balance there. I'm trying to meet a balance. I don't know the best way of going about doing that.
I don't either.
So have you had specific pushback from people saying, calling out people for monopolizing or?
Not yet, but however, last couple of years, there's been some spin-off teams that have been developed outside of Hudson Boosters that are looking for field time. And that's kind of where this is stemming from, because typically in the past it's just been, like I said, it's just been grandfathered in. Hudson Boosters and adult softballs are the ones using the facility. Well, now we have these other groups, and what do we do with them, right? They're Hudson residents. They live here, and when
right. And well, it's not even Hudson necessarily spin-off groups now. We also have a big request in from Minnesota that they want to do a big tournament, for on a weekend, and I don't know if it's conflict yet or not. But so then where do they fall into this? And it's getting challenging.
No, and I love the idea of trying to get ahead of it and putting in some boundaries so that you can have a rule book to, your own rule book to play by.
But I don't know how to help you out of the scheduling conundrum. Like you said, the book could take a big hunk of it right away.
Maybe we just leave. Maybe we say that you can't have Saturdays, and then that opens it up to other groups that want to use, just pick a day that they can't use. And then the next wave is able to try and schedule that day. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
A day or two. Maybe they can't use it Mondays and Saturdays, or just pick 2 days or something like that. The rest of the time they can have it, and they can schedule as many events and games or practices they want on those days, but outside those 2 other days, just so that
So it's available to other groups.
so it's available to other groups.
Or I'm wondering, Deb, and you might know more, do you have like a date when, do you have a date like in the spring when like everyone submit your calendars, so like boosters would submit it and everyone else?
Yes, we have normally been the middle of March, like you said, because they start early, obviously, especially a lot of those traveling teams and things. So yeah, we do that, and I guess we can do that again, and as we always have, and see where it is, and see if there is an issue. You'd want to believe most of them do work together. High school obviously works with the boosters quite, for scheduling. Work with around their schedules for their time. It's like I said, we've got these other organizations that are coming in that are looking for field space, and so they obviously want nights that the boosters have. So I don't know if they want the same nights, you give them get 2 fields, 2 fields each or something like that. I'm not sure how, but I think we need to get what they really are looking for. We've got 3 requests in already for next year. We know what they want, and we haven't really sat down and put them like in a calendar to see what the select is. So, and then and the tournaments as well. So, but
Well, something we're going to have to solve for you before this spring when you go to booking.
Right. Yep,
Yeah.
we've got a couple months to figure it out.
So maybe I will, thinking it through in my head, maybe I do just designate in the Grandview Burton Park Field, document that Sunday nights are for adult softball. They get first dibs on it. If they're disbanded or they're not using it for the year, then it opens it up to other entities to reserve that time. And then same goes for boosters. Boosters, you get, fields A, B, and 1, 2, 3, 4 on these nights. You get 1 and 2 on these nights, and maybe do it that way instead of trying to jumble it all. And then these are maybe have the organizations express interest in using our fields, and then we give them available time slots. And if it works in your schedule, great. If it doesn't, then it doesn't. And maybe go about it that way, even be more proactive and actually tell the groups what times they can use instead of having them dictate to us what they want to use, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think those grandfather groups, for lack of better, boosters and softball and the like, that they pick their calendar first.
Sure.
For that thing, and then it goes to the others.
Okay.
Excuse me, Matt Parent, he's on the screen and just asked if he can ask a question. Matt Parent is on our conversation, and he's with the Hudson Boosters. He's president, I believe. Can you introduce yourself, Matt?
Yes, thanks, Deb. Yep. My name is Matt Parent. I'm the baseball commissioner, actually. So I am, in a sense, people get confused on the commissioner title, but yes, president of the Hudson baseball program, which is affiliated with the Hudson Boosters. My question is, and thank you for inviting me. I think we're just a little confused on the why, why do we have, or why is it under consideration to allow other entities, nonprofits, non-Hudson entities, a stab at some of the fields when you have nonprofits who are all Hudson residents, long time. I heard you make a list of why certain entities are priorities, and we check every box. So I'd like to hear more on why we might lose out on a field just to allow a different team from the cities a chance to play there.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, so Matt, the whole reason this has come up is because, as you know, I mean, there's some groups that have spun off from Hudson Boosters. You're aware of that. And a lot of those groups are Hudson residents, just like people are residents of Hudson Boost, are affiliated with Hudson Boosters are city residents. And, ultimately it's a public facility. And, Hudson Boosters, as much as the city appreciates all the time and money and effort spent to bring that facility up to what it is now. And that's why when we made the priority list, you were top of the priority, right? So we're trying to work with groups that have long relationships with the city. But I mean, it's hard for us as a municipality to tell no to other taxpayers that we use their money to build a facility and say, no, you can't use it because Hudson Boosters has basically monopolized the facility. So that's why this is where this is coming from.
Sure, and I guess I would just counter again that those entities are for profit, and they aren't 100% Hudson girls or boys.
Mm-hmm.
So some of them maybe helped pay for it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. No, that's why we're having this discussion tonight. That's why we have the priority list. That's what we're trying to come up with a way to put it on paper to, if I leave tomorrow, that the next person walking in has some direction and why things, because like you said, it's been handshake, it's been verbal agreements. We're just trying to think the process through and make it fair and equitable to everyone that we have had relationships and moving forward. So
thank you, and I appreciate the feedback, and I'm not, it might sound like I'm trying to argue. I'm not. I just want to make it clear, I'm not trying to prevent other entities from using our parks. I just, as a program, we have a big need. We don't have enough fields.
Yeah.
So when I see fields that are possibly open, I'm going to, it's my job to make sure that our kids have somewhere to play. And we're in a bind right now. So that's why I'm maybe pushing a little bit stronger.
And to be honest, maybe it's a legal question. Maybe it's a phone call with Kathy McKittrick and just explain the situation and what are the ramifications if one group monopolizes facility. What are the legal ramifications of that? And she might have a different perspective and look at some other case law that might help assist us with this discussion.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't want, I know, Pat, you have planning commission coming up. I don't want to take up your time. This is good conversation. This is what I needed. So I think I have some direction here. I think I will reach out to Kathy and just get her thoughts on it. Maybe she can look at some other examples and what other communities have done from a legal perspective. Like I said, I also don't want to put the city in perspective in a situation where we're getting, sued because, we're limiting public space to just one or two groups. So,
Right.
But yeah, I think, like I said, thank you for the conversation and for the suggestions tonight. I appreciate it.
Good.
So,
you want to do your summary, Mike, on the parks right now?
Yeah, not a lot to report. Obviously, Dell Construction is still continuing to work on the shelter up at Grandview. They have the trusses up. We met with Excel Energy. They're going to be running the electrical service over there early December. So our plan is to basically, Dell's going to finish up the facility, but we're not going to turn it on, obviously, we're in the winter now and it's freezing. So they'll come back in the spring and they'll make it live. They'll turn the water on and they'll test everything, and then we'll close out the project at that time. So that's that. And then the other update that I have is Jonathan Barnes, our park staff person lead. He finally pulled the dock out of Lakefront Park here on Monday at the boat launch. So yesterday. So the season, obviously people can still go down there and launch at their own peril, but they just won't have the dock there. And it's been a banner year. Obviously with COVID, a lot of people got out on the river. I'm curious to see what the final numbers are at. I know right now we've already broken our all-time high and we still have a couple of bins of money to process. So we'll report back to the board when we get that final number. So other than that, parks are winterized and, and if some of you weren't aware, at the council last night, city council approved a movie production company to come into the city late November and through the month of December and film some scenes for a movie in our downtown district and underneath the Hudson Arch and in the park. So if you're wondering what's going on with some production tents, that's what's going on. So that's exciting news to promote Hudson. So
Yeah.
Good.
Those agendas that were brought up. If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second.
All those by saying aye.
I
Bye.
Opposed? Thank you, everyone, for